Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings. Joining us today is Addison Edmonds from Gunner once again. Addison, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Also
on the show today, we have Cory Loeffler, and we brought Cory in mainly to introduce kind of a new program from Gunner. And Addison, why don't you go ahead and take that where you kind of introduce this new program, and we'll kind of explain why we're talking about this, and also a hunt and experience that you guys shared just a couple weeks back.
Yeah, so we got Cory Loeffler from DRC Calls. I met Cory about 4 years ago up at a hunt in Minnesota, and we've been buddies ever since. But so the Gunner Dogs concept that we've got, now that Gunner's passed, our marketing team kind of thought it'd be cool to tell the story of other once-in-a-lifetime dogs. And we were starting with Cory and his dog Rue, and we went up to do some backcountry duck hunting with Cory and hang out with Rue and kind of hear their story.
No, that's cool. Hey, Cory, welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, man.
Pleasure to be here, guys. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me on.
And before we get into the hunt here, do you want to kind of explain, kind of how you do these backcountry hunts? And I know you mentioned you're doing them up in northern Minnesota, but kind of just describes the situation that you find yourself in up there in those hunts.
Boy, I tell you what, it kind of stemmed from myself and my wife. Well, we watched a TV series called Alone. Maybe some of the viewers are familiar with that show. And I said, man, that'd be a lot of fun to do a duck hunt like that. I know the exact spot. And a couple of my friends had done something pretty similar to that in years past, probably about 10 years ago. And so we just travel up to some public land in northern Minnesota, set out onto a public campsite, basically set up camp, and then go way back into the bush and hunt for however many days we can survive. And then and that's about it. So it gets pretty wild up there.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Addison, how did Cory convince you to go on this hunt?
I don't know if he had to. I think Andrew, or one of our marketing guys, was putting together and said, "You want to go hunt with Cory in northern Minnesota and camp for a few days?" And it didn't take much convincing.
Now that's cool. And so let's get to the dogs. So, how many dogs did you guys have with you on the hunt?
Just had Rue with us.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep, just the one.
Cool. And before we jumped on here, we had kind of had a brief little discussion, and just to give the listeners a reference, they did this hunt like October 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, right around in there. But, there was also some discussion about some training that you do with your dog, and I'd like to get into that. But first, let's talk about how you tie your dog into this backcountry hunt. I mean, I've been on plenty of hunts with plenty of dogs, even in lodges and everything, where sometimes the dog can cause some issues with, whether it's not it's running in the camp or, tearing something up in camp. But how do you handle that on these backcountry trips?
Well, our dogs are family dogs first, and then they're hunting dogs after that, and then they're hunt test dogs after that. So it kind of depends on what people want in their dog. Some people value ribbons and field trial placings more than they want to have a family dog or a hunting dog, or vice versa, or whatever. It's different strokes for different folks, I guess. So, but our dogs are family dogs first. They're very well behaved around people, in my call shop where I'm making duck and goose calls every day, in the house, around my young daughters. So to have Rue at camp was, basically it was a breeze. You don't even really know she's there unless you're eating something, and then she'll come over and try to investigate, like any lab would. So yeah, I mean, she fit in seamless to camp and was kind of a joy to have around.
All right, so let's talk about the hunt a little bit. I guess we'll go start with Cory here. Kind of describe what this year's hunt was like. I mean, we're close enough in time frame here that we can kind of reference weather and birds and things like that. I think that's pretty valuable. I wouldn't get too specific. You don't want to give away any of your secret spots here, but just kind of reference how you got in there, where you stayed, how you did it, and then also the hunt.
Yeah, so in northern Minnesota's coming off of a drought from all summer. Didn't hardly see a drop of rain since the spring thaw, and lo and behold, it poured on us pretty much the whole weekend while we tried to sleep in tents up there. And Andrew and I slept in the one big tent together, and I thought everyone was going to sleep in there, but the pickup trucks were a lot more dry than that big tent was, so we had some water issues that made things fairly interesting. And but no, we drive into a state or a public campsite. They're free to stay at. They don't have anything. They're primitive. There's no electricity or water. Sometimes you'll get lucky and find a rock fire ring there, and which we did. So we pulled in there. We were the only campers at that particular site, and then we take off and just have usually just a couple mile drive to some public ground, the big swamp, I guess, where we were hunting on that trip. And we utilized my daughter's little Schwinn pedal bike for some transportation when we had to park the truck, because we had to park in a certain area, and we were hunting about a mile and a half from that area. So Addison had to drive the truck back, or excuse me, he had to drive the bike back to the truck the one day, and there was a young boy on the bank fishing with his dad, and Addison tried to talk to the kid, but the kid couldn't even talk to him. He was laughing so hard at Addison driving this off-white girl's Schwinn bike with a basket on it. So lots of laughs throughout the weekend, and that was just kind of the tip of the iceberg a little bit.
That's awesome. So Addison, did you shoot any birds?
We did. We shot a good amount of ducks, and we also got to do a little grouse hunting in the afternoons, and we had a great time. That rain, it was, I guess I'm glad that they got rain, but it was poor timing on our part. But we had a big time.
That's good. Yeah, it's funny that you guys are referencing that northern Minnesota, because I was actually in northern Minnesota the week prior to you guys being up there, and it was still dry and about 85 degrees. So my hunting was not very successful. It was pretty brutal. So I probably would have taken the rainy weather just to have a little change of pace up there.
Well, I was expecting, northern Minnesota weather, and for it to be really cold, but it was still pretty warm, just a little wet.
Yeah, this was the latest that I'd ever gone up, which the first week of October. I'd been going up that first weekend of the opener. I've been up there a couple different times, and it was snowing then. And I go up this year, and it literally was 80 degrees, and we were in flip-flops and shorts. So that was a big bummer. But it sounds like you guys got on some grouse, which is cool. And that's a pretty interesting angle that, I was aware of it, but have not really been successful until this year. But Cory, you're using your dogs on the grouse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They double as pheasant dogs, upland dogs, hunt test dogs, family dogs, duck retrievers, big goose retrievers. They're kind of like the Swiss Army knife of dogs around here. So multi-purpose.
Yeah, and I've been around a lot of dogs, and even some upland to an extent as far as labs go. I don't do a ton of upland hunting, but as far as grouse, getting into that real thick brush and having the dogs working close, how do you train the dogs to do that?
I run an electronic collar on the dogs that has a beep feature on the side of it, and the dogs can hear that beep, and when I beep them, that beep means to come back to me. So if they're getting a little bit too far away, then I just have my finger on that beep button. I beep them a couple times, they turn a 180, and then they come running back. And I think they just learn over time that when we're hunting that thick cover for rough grouse, they need to stay a lot closer, and I'm beeping them more frequently than, let's say, if we're out in the CRP grass hunting for pheasants. Well, then they can range a little bit more, 30, 40 yards from side to side, and it's no big deal. But 30 or 40 yards in a rough grouse woods, that's way too far. All you're going to hear is wing beats in the distance, and you're not going to see any grouse flush at that range. So yeah, just use that beep feature, and works out pretty good.
Some of that thick cover that we were busting into up there, I think about 10 yards would have been too far. I know I came home, my wife was like, what did you do? I mean, my arms and shoulders were all bruised up from busting in and really trying to get at, once we actually had a pointer this year, which was surprising. I'd never really hunted grouse over a pointer. So that changed it up a little bit for us. So the dog would get on point and then we'd bust in to try and get it. So that was pretty cool. Did you guys see any woodcock when you were up there?
Oh yeah.
We did.
Did you shoot some?
We did.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, we got into a bunch of them. I think it was really good timing that week prior, so I'm sure you guys probably got into a few more. So, back to this hunt overall, what are you guys doing with the birds? Kind of explain the process of, are you guys eating ducks and woodcock and grouse for every meal?
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes on some of the hunts we can pack a little more gear, a little more aggressively, and then some of them are very primitive backwoods hunts where we're taking a boat in and planning to stay for 4 or 5 days. So then the gear restrictions are pretty stringent that way. And so typically what I like to do, especially this time of year, is pluck those ducks, and then I'm utilizing all the skin and the fat that the ducks have on them, as well as all of the meat on there too. So in my opinion, culinary wise, duck fat is second to none. Duck fat and snow goose fat, speckle belly fat, I absolutely love cooking with that. And so I'm going to pluck the ducks any chance I get and then use that stuff in. But, I've eaten so many meals in the recent past of duck and goose. I can't even remember what we cooked up there, Addison. What did we have?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of duck, some grouse. But I mean, one cool thing, Cory is a really good cook, and you can tell he'd done it before. And I hadn't eaten the duck legs very often, but he cooked them with every meal, and they're phenomenal. It was good to learn about just different ways to do it. But yeah, Cory heard that I was coming, so he said, "Well, we can't take the boat and be primitive. We got to bring the trucks so Addison can be comfortable." So we brought some bacon too, and some ice and stuff like that.
Yeah, he didn't want to take you out too far and make it too primitive. He wanted you to have a little bit of comfort, but it sounds like you still got pretty wet throughout the whole trip.
Yeah. But yeah, let's talk about Rue a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to lead into that with some of the training and some of the dogs and getting back to really the gunner dogs message here. And Addison, and I'll let you start. What stands out with Rue to really make you recognize that dog as a gunner dog?
Yeah, so Cory, I'd never met Rue before.
Just Boone 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I got to be honest. If you heard the saying, like, I like my dogs, I don't like your dogs, or just I ever since Gunner passed, and I kind of went through all that. If I see other people's dogs, most of the time I'm just kind of in the back of my head like missing Gunner, or that dog's not, it's not my dog. And watching Rue and hearing Cory tell kind of the story about her and just seeing how good of a dog she was. And the first night at the campfire, Rue came up to me and just looked at me, and I kind of looked at her, and I just instantly realized, like, this is a special dog. And I got kind of choked up just thinking about it. It was the first time that I had seen kind of light at the end of the tunnel that, cause I mean, Cory and I had conversations about it, because Cory's got a Boone that's got a pretty good story. That's a once in a lifetime dog. And then he's got Rue, and I was pleasantly surprised that possible to have more than one. And so she was a very special dog. She was very smart. You could tell she hunted very well, but she was just very well mannered. And you can tell that Cory spent a lot of time with her, and that they just know each other. And that's what I had with Gunner. And we spent a lot of time talking about, special dogs like that. But I got to be honest, going to the trip, they didn't tell me what the concept was. I was just told I was going to go hunt. And then I heard about it, the concept, and I didn't really know Rue. And I wasn't like all in on it until I got to hang out with her and hunt with her, and then just be with her and realize, like, this is actually going to be a perfect story. Like, I couldn't imagine a better dog and owner to start that series with.
Cory, it sounds like, Addison sees, so much in Rue, but what makes Rue so special to you? And before you start this, I just want to reference it. What is Rue? A black lab, yellow lab? We haven't referenced that. We've kind of talking about Rue like everyone's seen a picture of her. So I'll let you go ahead and describe her first.
Yeah, she's a small framed 58 to 60 pound dark yellow female. Some might call her a fox red. Fox red just means she's a dark yellow. But yeah, she's a purebred Labrador retriever. She's got a HR title in the HRC, and she's got a master hunter title in the AKC. So that's kind of a little bit of her and her training. Bought her as a 7-week-old puppy and picked her up, and actually one of her litter mates, a sister, and then my friend Lincoln Bierman in South Dakota has that dog, and so that's a full litter mate to Rue. Dixie is her name, so I got to bring those two little fur balls home, and I brought them home on December the 3rd, and then we had my family, my wife actually had a little girl, Eva, on December 11th. So we brought a brand new puppy and a brand new human baby into the household at basically the same exact time. So a lot of people, a lot of our family members thought we were pretty much crazy, but we're always up for a challenge. So no, I had taken a look at Bill Hillman's puppy training methods just prior to getting her, and I kind of dove into that. I really liked the theories, the concepts, and everything that he was trying to promote and to teach to do with a dog. And I tell you what, I followed his teachings like to a T as best as I could. At the time, she was the only dog in the house because our other dog, Bella, she was down snow goose hunting with a couple of my friends, and actually some guide friends of mine. So she was guiding snow goose hunts. And then Boone, my black lab male, he was down at Chris Aiken's place in Arkansas, and he was getting prepared to run the Grand. So Rue was the only dog in the house. And I was just able to spend so much time with her when she was a puppy, and really just kind of, if she was a ball of clay, so to speak, I was just really able to mold that into exactly what I was looking for in a dog. And she just, it just fit her genetics and her mental style and capabilities. It just fit her perfectly. She took to that style of training awesome. It's just very positive, very rewarding style of teaching a puppy how to be a good dog, basically, and almost no negative or punishment involved with that training style. So she really trusts me all the time, because she really doesn't have any reason not to trust me. And I think that spending that much time and that training method from day one, or when she was 7 weeks old, all the way up until she was about almost a year old, I think that really just helped her become who she is. And she actually just had so much fun training, because I tried to make it fun for her. She had a behavior that I wanted, and I had something that she wanted, which was a bumper or her dummy. And so we had this give and take relationship where she always wanted the bumper and I always wanted a behavior, like if it was to be a good dog or sit or stay there, something like that. And she really understood that give and take behavior from an early age, and it really helped her advance her training. And she actually started passing some senior hunt tests when she was just after 8 months old and 9 months old, and she had her senior title by the time she was 10 months old. So I had never even seen a dog that young run in a senior test before, or I've never even heard of one. But she kind of set the bar when she went and competed. And that's kind of Rue. She's just been a real special dog pretty much since day one.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like you mentioned, her, it sounds like her temperament fit perfect into even your situation. So you had bringing a new baby home. That can add some stress, and maybe the training regimen that you started out with maybe helped you and her at the same time. So that's a pretty cool aspect of it. What were some of the real key training focuses that you did with her? And this is just more or less for our audience who maybe out there, working with a young retriever right now. But what are some of the key things that you started out with her when she was real young? Because it sounds like she progressed really fast. If she's running, senior hunt tests, so young, what'd you start out with there?
Yeah. So basically, right away, it is kind of a treat training program, and she sort of understands that give and take relationship that I had referenced before with food or with treats. And so she understands or understood from an early age that she would have to sit down and be still and look at me, and then I would give her a piece of dog food. So that was the give and take relationship that I was trying to establish with her, is that she has a behavior that I want, and that's to sit, and I have a treat that she wants, and she's got to sit before she gets a treat. So we did a bunch of that stuff, and then I transitioned the treats into a bumper or just fun fetch, or just a play fetch, or some people call them hups or something like that. But I transitioned treats to a bumper, and then we carried the training outside. So when she was a little 7-week-old puppy, we did a lot of stuff inside in the living room. And then as she got a little bit older and we were, playing fetch outside, then she really understood that give and take relationship, because we basically had been doing that exact thing from when she was 7 weeks old. So she really didn't know anything any different. Another big concept with that training program is it's all positive and no negative, or it's all positive reinforcement. And I didn't tell her no in a stern voice. I didn't say the words no to her probably until after she was 6 months old. I didn't discipline her in any way. Basically, if she did something wrong, I would just ignore that behavior, and we wouldn't acknowledge it. We'd just ignore it. And I basically just put the blame on myself. Like, let's say, for example, you have a puppy that gets your shoes and chews up your shoes. Well, I think it's kind of human nature to go out and maybe bring the puppy over to the shoes and then try to discipline the puppy and tell the puppy that was wrong to do that. Well, the puppy doesn't even remember that they chewed up the shoes. The only thing that they see is that there's a pair of chewed up shoes here, and I got my butt spanked for it. So it doesn't really do any good other than to deteriorate the trust that the dog has in you, because you're the one administering the discipline. So instead of doing any type of discipline, I put the blame on myself and said I shouldn't have put those shoes there. Those shoes should have been up on the rack where the puppy couldn't get to them. If the puppy pees on the floor, well, you should have let the puppy outside sooner after it woke up from its nap and not allowed the puppy to pee on the floor. So anytime the dog did something wrong, I placed the blame on myself, and I tried to provide basically kind of a perfect world for her to grow up in, where she wouldn't screw up, and then we wouldn't have to discipline or even feel the need to discipline for anything. And then when she did something right, I would positively reinforce that with more food or more fetches or lots of love and real excited voice. And like I tell a lot of people that when they bring a 7-week-old puppy home, I say, well, you're going to have to put the man card down and pick up the pom-poms, because it's time to cheer on this little puppy. So a lot of people get a little chuckle out of that one, but I really wholeheartedly believe in that. It's so rewarding for the dog to see you get excited when they do something right, and it just really clicks in their mind that, okay, that's why I'm here. I know what I'm supposed to do now. That's what my purpose is.
No, that's awesome. And I think the positive reinforcement there is an awesome message. Addison, were you going to add something there?
I was going to ask Cory if that method is applicable to 4 kids under the age of 6. I've been trying that, and it hadn't gone so well. But just spending time with Cory and listening to him talk about it, we got a new poodle a few months back, and with all these little kids, just my dog training hat has not been put on very much, and just hearing him talk about building their trust and positive reinforcement, and just like spending time with them and not letting them be in a situation to make a mistake. Ever since I got home, I've been treating our puppy Teal, differently, because I realized how many things I was doing wrong after hearing him talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's some good lessons for people to take to heart definitely with the positive reinforcement. I mean, I think that's a very good lesson that a lot of amateur trainers especially can really take to heart. My main question with Rue here is, you talked about all the time that you had kind of just with her and how that really generated the bond between you and her. How did that go when the other dogs came home? You mentioned you had 2 other dogs who were either at training or at Snow Goose Camp. When all of a sudden she wasn't, the only child there. How did she react to that?
I thought she took that perfect, and especially when the older dogs came back into our household, I thought they took to her very well. Also, and I kind of had referenced her to a ball of clay earlier, and I think I had really already started to mold her into what I wanted and what I wanted her to become. She was far enough along before the other dogs came in that they didn't have their influence on that ball of clay, and in getting her to maybe be a little bit more naughty more times than not. So I think it worked out really well that she was our only dog, or the only dog in the house, for what I think was probably about 4 months or so, 3 or 4 months, something like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's enough time for her to get accustomed to being the only dog, especially when 2 older dogs come back. And
yep, absolutely.
Like you said, probably started trying to teach her some bad habits.
Yeah, and Cory, you also talk about how they're socialized at such a young age with your 3 daughters. Do you think that had anything to do with kind of getting into being socialized with the other 2 dogs as well?
Yeah, Rue is very submissive by nature, so there was really no socialization issues with the other dogs coming in. And Rue had already been, she had went down to Texas with us. She'd been on a trip down there. I would take her everywhere with me, and my secret to that and that type of socialization is I would always have one pocket of my pants that was had dog food in it, filled up with dog food, and she viewed that dog food as a treat. So I would take her all over the place, and it didn't matter where. If we were going to the grocery store, I'd bring a cart, or I'd throw her right in the cart at the grocery store. And I tell you what, if you want attention from every person that's in the grocery store, bring a 8-week-old puppy in there with you, because they are all going to come up to you and ask to pet the puppy, which is perfect training. And most everyone was very polite and said, "Hey, can we pet the puppy?" And I say, "Sure. Can I ask you to give her this treat first?" So then I would hand that dog food over to the stranger. Stranger has the dog food. Stranger gives the dog food to the dog. Dog is like, "Holy smokes, this is awesome. Like, all these people, these random strange people that are coming up to me and petting me, they all give me food first. This is amazing." So that was huge for socialization, and I'd take her in the vehicle all over the place, and I think that was another big part of why she fits in so good at duck camp or around the house or whatever.
Yeah, no, and that socialization is super important, especially at a young age. But Addison, just kind of going back to the Gunner's dogs, was it the temperament of Rue that really stood out to you? And also, is that kind of part of you mentioned it, the family orientation? Is that something that you guys really look at? Like, you're not necessarily just looking for the best hunting dog out there, but it's also the temperament of the dog around the family, and that it is a family pet. Is that something you guys look at?
Yeah, I don't think it's just the temperament. I think it's just the combination of everything that makes that dog special. And after being around Rue and hearing Cory, there's so many similarities of I took that dog everywhere with me, and very similar training methods early on with Gunner. And I didn't even know the concept on our way up there, but like just after we talked through his training method and how good of a special of a dog she was, it's kind of just like the whole story of y'all have got that bond, and she is a just phenomenal dog that I think all dogs have the potential for. It's just like Cory's saying, it's the time and the training and done in the right way.
Yeah. And Cory, what's the next step with Rue? More additional tests, more, what are you looking forward to with her moving forward?
Honestly, right now we have quite a few deposits in the safe for puppies out of Rue. So that's honestly the next step. We're just waiting for her to come into season, and we're going to have a litter of puppies with her. But as far as hunt tests and hunting, you know what? She's got her master title. She was qualified to run in the 2020 Master National, and they canceled that whole deal because of COVID. And that doesn't really fit with our schedule anyway, because they just got done running the Master National here last week sometime. And we're full under, right in the middle of hunting season when they run that. So that I don't want her running that thing. We don't have anything else to prove there. It just doesn't fit with our schedule. And so maybe we'll run a few more HRC tests and get her finished title put on her at some time. If we get bored and we want to go play around in that game, I think we will. And maybe we'll dabble in the field trial, run a qual at some time. Who knows? Well, I let her decide. If she's looking like she wants to go and do it, then we'll go and try it,
Absolutely. And, and just to kind of bring this, to light with, Addison's relationship with Gunner and yours with Rue, and there's something to always mention, it's a difficult process. Because you only have a limited time with these dogs. I think there's a good saying that the worst part about having a hunting dog is that they're not going to live as long as you, no matter what. So how do you look at that? As knowing the insides and outs of Addison's story with Gunner and how passionate he was. How do you kind of view that with Rue and in comparison?
As a full-time duck and goose call maker, I absolutely make time in my schedule to hunt a lot, and I go on a lot of different hunting trips. And the biggest thing that I can do for my dogs is to just bring them with, because I know that's where they want to be. Whether it's chasing pheasants or chasing ducks and geese, it doesn't really matter, as long as they're out in a field chasing birds. That's what makes them the happiest. And I kind of feel like I'm sort of a servant to my dogs, and I just want to bring them to their happy place as many times as I possibly can, and try my hardest to give them the life that they deserve. And I feel like I do a pretty good job of it. And we have a lot of fun, and we spend a lot of time out in the field.
Very cool. And Addison, just to kind of add on to that, that's a very similar, kind of sentiment that you had with Gunner. Just trying to spend, I know last time we talked, you kind of talked about spending as much time, in the field with him as possible. Is that something that you guys are also looking for as far as the Gunner's Dogs program?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know when the next feature is going to be, or kind of what the qualifications are, but I think just knowing, I think we hit a home run with the first one with Cory, having that same mentality of give the dogs the lives they deserve. And I think if they're someone that hunts and has a hunting dog, that kind of goes with it, is trying to take the dog out in the field as much as possible. So yeah, I think kind of, but I don't know all the filters that they've got on it.
Okay, cool. No, and I got one more question for you, Addison, before I'll let you go and talk about some new products from Gunner here. But my last question is one of those deposits in Cory's safe from you?
Well, I had a heart-to-heart with Rue, and I asked Cory about that, and we don't have anything solidified yet. I've got to figure out my game plan on timing and dogs, and I'm ready to get one, but not right now, but maybe in the future.
That's awesome. No, I didn't want to put you on the spot there, but I know last time that we talked on the podcast, you had mentioned that, you just weren't quite ready yet. And, I had shared some stories of how I was very similar in that manner after I lost my first dog. And so I didn't want to just put you right on the spot there, but I think that was a good, a good little transition for you to kind of explain your process or your timeline for your process of moving into the next dog.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I texted Cory last night or this morning, because I've grown up with chocolate labs, and I texted him, if you can breed Rue with one of these chocolate labs, I'll buy the whole litter and figure out what to do with them. Yeah, so we still got to figure that out.
That's awesome.
Well, I was just thumbing through some of the deposit checks here, and looks like there's one from Emily Edmonds in here. So
Perfect.
You might have to talk with your wife on that one.
Yeah.
That's exactly how the process works at my house. Someone even sent my wife, when I was in northern Minnesota, someone sent my wife a picture like, hey, got a litter coming out, and a picture of this 5-week-old black lab. And she's like, all right, we'll take it. I'm like, no. That'll break my 12-year-old lab's heart if I brought home a 5-week-old, 6-7-week-old puppy right now. Now that's great. And no, Cory, that's awesome. That's a cool story to share about Rue. It's an interesting process. Your positive reinforcement, the way that you train, the way that you have really, and I think one thing that really stuck out for me and our audience should take note of is the fact that when you take the dog everywhere, even when they're young, that really, for me, I really think it makes them trust you in all scenarios. So then when you get into maybe a hunting scenario that they're not comfortable with, even when they're older, it really gives them the confidence in you that you're not putting them in a bad situation because they're so accustomed to being around you all the time. I think that's a cool part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Well, hey, Addison, do you want to share some news? You kind of mentioned that you might have some new products coming from Gunner, and that's always exciting. The gearheads out there, they seem to really eat the podcast up anytime you talk about new products. So do you want to share some news on some new products?
Sure. A lot of the stuff that I'm really excited about, not till next year, but I was told that I can mention we've got an updated all-weather kit, better material, just a better product all around than our current all-weather kit. And then we've got a dog kennel food and water bowl that mounts to the door of the kennel so you can keep your dogs watered on trips. And there's a lot more to come. It's just a matter of time.
That's exciting. I know you guys did some upgrades on the fan kit as well.
Yeah.
Something that I just taken note of throughout the summer. And I think that was an awesome addition. I've heard some people talk about that was a really cool addition.
Yeah, I think that's going to be releasing in a couple months, but it'll be ready for next year for sure.
Very cool. Well, hey, Addison, Cory, this has been great. We've had a great conversation. I'm glad we got to talk about the Gunner's Dogs program. Got to talk about Rue. Got to talk about your guys' hunt in northern Minnesota. Sounds like it was wet, but a pretty good experience all around. Appreciate you guys coming on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'd like to thank my guests, Addison Edmonds from Gunner Kennels and Cory Loeffler from DRC Calls for coming on the show today and talking about Gunner's Dogs, the new program from Gunner Kennels, and also Cory's dog, Rue. Just sounds like a very special retriever and wish them the best. I'd like to thank our producer, Chris Isaac, for doing a great job of putting the show together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for supporting wetlands conservation and listening to the DU Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.